Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist and a professor at Harvard University. He is also an author and a public intellectual with a specialty in religious thought, particularly on how religion has contributed to the shape of the modern mind. The subtitle of his second book, 12 Rules for Life, which was a gift a few years ago and has been sitting on my shelf ever since, recently caught my attention. I tend to shy away from books that have proclaiming some number followed by the word rules or secrets or tips. But Peterson's subtitle for this book, which is simply An Antidote for Chaos, feels particularly apt these days, and so I took it down looking for a bit of hope and a few helpful instructions. I began thumbing through it. The 12 rules are straightforward enough and have nothing to do with the color of your parachute or following your bliss. Peterson is eminently practical in his advice, and chapter 8 is a good example, titled simply, Tell the Truth, or at least Don't Lie. Chapter 8 begins with an anecdote about Peterson's clinical training at the inpatient psychiatric ward at Montreal's Douglas Hospital. One day, Peterson and his classmates were together awaiting instructions from their professor when a long-term patient, a young woman suffering from schizophrenia, approached the group of psychologists in training and asked them a series of questions. Why are you all standing here? What are you doing? Can I come with you? Peterson quickly sized up the situation, realizing that there were two possible ways to answer. He could, in his words, tell the patient a story designed to save everyone's face, or I could answer truthfully. Quote, we can only take 8 people in our group would have fallen into the first category, as would have, we are just leaving the hospital now. Both of these answers, or any similar one anyone else might be able to spin, would have spared feelings, both the patients and the psychological residents, and they both would have been lies. Rather, Peterson reports that he told the patient the truth, that they were a group of students studying to be psychologists, and that she couldn't join them or go with them precisely because she was not. Peterson writes that the answer highlighted the distinction between her situation and ours, making the gap between us greater and more evident. The answer was harsher than a well-crafted white lie, and the patient looked crestfallen and hurt. And then, as is so often the way with young children or with anyone for that matter who is able to see the clarity of reason when confronted with the simple truth, the patient understood. And Peterson writes, it was all right. That was just how it was. The young woman went her way, the young psychologists went theirs. The crafting of lies, the little ones meant to deceive or to mask, as well as the bigger ones meant to deny or to confuse, telling lies takes work. And while we can all think of some people as being so good at lying that it doesn't look like work at all, compulsive is a word we sometimes attach to these sorts of professional grade liars. But mark my words, it's still work, even if it's unconscious. This work of crafting and telling lies, it costs something. The honor and trust of others, for starters, but also something deeper in the soul of the one telling the lie as well. Peterson knows this, and he devotes a chapter to the simple truth that truth is always the best way, even, perhaps especially, when it's the most costly way. The story of Jesus and the Pharisees we heard this morning is another story of somewhat awkward questions and of the little white lies that could be told to save everyone's face. It begins with a question to Jesus. Who sent you here? By whose authority are you doing these things? You can hear underneath of it the, who are you and who do you think you are? Jesus could have answered plainly, but the simple truth would have been a whole lot all at once, and so Jesus eases into it. He takes a moment to build the relationship and to engage in dialogue. He doesn't lie. He doesn't ease their discomfort, but he also doesn't come right out with it. He acknowledges their question, and he tells them that he may answer it, But first, he has a question for them. Now, of course, they could have replied, "We asked you first." But they too take seriously Jesus' question, which I have to say, even to a group of theologians that they were, this is quite a question that Jesus asks them, and they know it. And they get to work talking amongst themselves, trying to come up with an answer, a spin. They get to work knowing that the crowd has an answer they want to hear. They know that this same answer would then prompt an immediate follow-up question from Jesus, one they really don't want to answer, one that probably goes along the lines of, "So why don't you believe?" But they also know that the answer they really want to give, the one they may actually believe, would be wildly unpopular, and the crowd may turn against them. And so they respond, "We do not know." And this sounds like a lie. This sounds like a lie, right? I think Jesus hears it as a lie. I think generations of faithful readers read it as a lie. It's a lie of omission. They're not fessing up to the full truth of what they know. Just another example of those evil Pharisees out to catch our good old Jesus. But what if it's not a lie? What if they really don't know? What if this question about the origin of John's baptism really is too much for them? Their mind can't conceive it. What if the cost of answering it is too much? As a psychologist, Jordan Peterson knows about the personal cost of truth and truths that can cost too much. Any one of us, which is to say most of us, which might even mean all of us, tell ourselves all sorts of little lies every day. The voice that says, "I'm not good enough," or "I don't deserve that," or "no one will love me," or whatever else it is that wakes you up at 3 a.m. These are the little lies we tell ourselves because the cost of truth, that you are good enough, that you do deserve whatever it is you're afraid you don't, and that you're lovable. The cost of that truth, it may cost too much. The cost of the truth is that you have to believe it. And then you may just have to reorganize your entire world, your entire self, your entire life in order to live it. You have to believe the truth. And when you start believing the truth, you come to see how the little life you built based on the lies you, or maybe it was someone else, has told you, how that little life, it doesn't fit the bigness of who your truth is. The psychological work of coming to face and speak truth may indeed feel costly. And summoning the courage to face it is what keeps psychologists and therapists employed. But the cost of truth is ultimately far less than the expense of the lie. Like the young woman's reaction in Peterson's story, the truth may be ultimately accepted, and then the cost quickly forgotten. The Pharisees are not ready to pay the price of the truth that Jesus is offering. The cost of the truth Jesus is offering would change their whole world, who they are, what they believe, who they know God to be, how they worship, how they serve, where they live, everything. This is an expensive proposition, and it's little wonder why they balk at it. They can't afford the sort of change Jesus is offering, or at least they don't think they can. It's not that they can't see the truth, it's that whatever lies they're living, those lies are comfortable, familiar, and easy. Their lies, they uphold their privilege, a privilege that they rather enjoy. And then this troublemaker Jesus, the word, the truth, shows up with a truth that promises the last shall be the first. And that's the trouble with Jesus, the same trouble the Pharisees had with John. The truth has a way of just showing up. It always does. The truth Jesus offers, however, is a life and a burden that is light. Peterson's 8th rule for life is no heavy burden, nor is it major theological revelation. Every child can tell you why Pinocchio's nose grows longer and longer. Every Harry Potter fan can tell you how the phrase, "I must not tell lies," how it sinks in over time. Every politician will tell you her opponent is lying. Every witness swears to the whole truth and nothing but it. We all have our own ways of attesting to our truth, both personally and communally. Telling our truths can feel like a very costly proposition. And so often, the truth we have to share is so bottled up that it comes out with any number of attendant emotions. And while truth is certainly to be valued, we must also be kind and gentle. A little truth can go a long way, especially when it's the life-changing, world-changing gospel kind. The Pharisees knew how expensive Jesus' truth was, and Jesus brings it with kindness, with a story, without apology, just as he is. This is an example for us today, maybe even by starting with ourselves today. What little lies have you been telling yourself that you might try speaking some loving truth to? What bigger lies have contributed to our society's ills and the privileges that need some loving truth spoken to fix? On this day, when our Jewish friends will gather tonight to begin the most fervent prayers of atonement in the year, what truth might you be ready to hear, and by hearing, be ready to believe? What truth may help you come to be at one, to atone with yourself? The cost of telling our truth may at first feel too much, but a life of lies is no life at all. Jesus came to give life, the way, the truth, and the life. The truth is simple and it will change your world. It is deep within each of us, ready to be spoken, ready to be free.